It's USfanTV. It's Thursday night, but we have a crew member down. He's missing. I'm Pat, but there is no Chris tonight. It's only TJ. Say hi, TJ.
Hello. How's everyone doing tonight?
So we thought we would talk about there's lots of stuff going on. Mr. Pulisic is in Chicago, and I got to see him yesterday in person, in the flesh. That was pretty cool. We'll talk about that. They're here to play Manchester City tomorrow at Soldier Field. We will talk about US Open Cup, and the draw was supposed to be today, but it wasn't because there was this whole thing with Portland and LAFC, and there's also lots of weird stuff going on with supporters groups around MLS that make me think that stuff's coming from the top of the league now, in cracking down on certain stuff. And we'll talk about whether it's unwarranted or warranted or what you guys think about that. But we should probably mention that France won the World Cup. Because we did win the World Cup. We haven't done a show since France won the World Cup. So I watched it with Chris at the Highbury Pub in Milwaukee, which is, with all due respect to the Globe, which I love here in Chicago, the Highbury, I think, is my favorite soccer bar anywhere. I love it there. There were tamales. They were thrown around. It's just like, it's like you're in a guy's living room. And it is the best. So
well, the food bar is absolutely amazing because it's not anything they sell. It's like literally somebody brings it in, I swear, half the time.
Yeah. And Joe, the owner, like, has these tamales that are brought in now that are just absolutely insane. So yeah, it was good to be, I lived up there for like 4 years. So it was good to be back up there and to see Chris. And I could confirm that he was alive then on Sunday when I saw him last. But I don't know about today. So I'm supposed to see him tomorrow. So if you guys are going to the game tomorrow in Chicago, and I've talked to some of you, including our guy Alex, who I saw yesterday at O'Hare, it's in the north end zone. I think I said it on the last show. It's 350 something, 352, 359, something like that. But
with the way you guys work, probably 357.
Something like that. We'll put it on our Twitter. If you're
Why not put it on Snapchat?
Because we don't have Snapchat, TJ, and we never will because we hate Snapchat.
I feel like I should set one up just to spite you guys, and then just keep putting things of Chris on there.
We had who was the dude that we were saying was our intern for a while that no longer watches the show?
Was that
Leipzig?
Was that Leipzig?
He was gonna get on it, and he didn't. So
I'll get it on my spare time.
Who is the brat behind TJ? Christian wants to know. A thug?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He runs my house. Yeah. At least he thinks he does.
So yeah, what'd you think of the actual? We've talked about like the viewing experience of watching the World Cup, but what'd you think of the game?
Well, I mean, the game itself was. I guess I was a little surprised because I didn't think Croatia would own the ball as much as they did. I thought France would come out and try and play, but they sat back and defended and countered. And I get it with Mbappe. You have like the greatest counterattack in the world, but I was a little surprised to see that. I
was surprised to see goals general in a final, which I can't remember. I'd have to go back, but it's always 1-0 or a shootout, or
the last time probably was it Ronaldo in the final. Ronaldo in the final with Brazil where they got jack stomped.
Was that 98 against France?
I think it was 98 against France. It was like 3-0 or something like it, where he looked like he was on drugs or he was injured or something.
That's right. There was something going on with his ears or something that game. That's right.
That was the last time I remember anything more than a goal or no goals.
Right.
A goal aside or whatever. Yeah.
And so it was, and that was kind of the trend for a long time in all finals. We saw it in Champions League too, where teams played not to lose, and so you had low or very little scoring, and it would, inevitably, like we saw in 2014 with Germany with Götze scoring in the dying minutes of extra time. It wasn't
exciting.
Yeah, it wasn't exciting. And that's not to say that low scoring or no scoring games, they don't have to be. Like I found some of them very exciting, but for whatever reason there was this trend where it was they were getting boring. But what I kind of feel like Croatia came out with nothing to lose, and they were like, let's just play and see what happens. They weren't sitting back and trying for a certain outcome. They were just going for it, and it may have ended up working for them. It didn't on this day, but France was the best team in the tournament. And the scary thing about France is, I don't know that we ever really saw how good they could be.
They were never forced. They were never forced to. And in this game specifically, they got to sit back and defend and play counter. And like I said, when you're running Mbappe at somebody at top speed, you have
He's
such
incredible.
an advantage over everybody, and so you never got to see how good they could be. I mean, to see the one thing I will say is when he was on the ball, though, Paul Pogba was a thing of beauty to watch too.
And he's a guy who I've shit on a lot, and it got me wondering. And Charles just said Pogba might go back to Juve. How much of it is Mourinho and what he's doing at United, and that stifles what Pogba can do? I wonder.
But I'll play the counter argument to that. How good was Pogba defensively against Croatia, which he had to learn with Mourinho, where he wasn't just giving free reign, where he learned. I mean, he played his defensive assignment so beautifully. It was so clogged up. There was, I mean, that's like in a basketball game, being able to throw the ball around half court and no one's near you. Great. You start getting closer, and he was where he needed to be. He wasn't out of place. And how much of that can you contribute to Mourinho? No, I agree. Mourinho needs to let the leash off him a little bit and let him be more creative going forward and not force the defensive assignments. But when forced to play into that defensive shell that they were playing, he was masterful. I mean, really, they weren't. Croatia was getting chances, but they weren't great. They weren't amazing. It wasn't like Lloris was standing on his head to keep him in the game. So I came away really impressed out of that game with Paul Pogba, just his all-around game. I felt like that was a step up, being able to play the transition better than I think he's played ever, fantastic.
Really. The right team won the tournament, and it's usually the case that happens, but it felt good. It was a good tournament. It was a fun tournament, one of my favorites ever. And we talked about how the U.S. not being there sort of opened it up to be more enjoyable and less depressing at times. And then, but it felt like it was capped by a team that was the best and deserved to win. And then all this stuff came out. Stuart Holden made the comment on Twitter that, hey, a ragtag team of US 19 and 20-year-olds without Pulisic tied this team right before the tournament. And then the
Twitterini.
Yeah,
the twits.
They immediately jumped down his throat saying, how can you say that? That's counterproductive. This is everything that's wrong with US soccer. This is coming from the top. This is all the conspiracy forcing this down our throats. We're not good enough. That didn't mean anything, blah, 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 which it is what it is. It's just, yes, two things can be true at the same time. We can be excited about the current guys, the current young crop of players who are going to play for the men's national team in the next few years. And we can also think that systematic things need to be fixed, and they don't have to be one and the same. You can think these two things are true. And so Stuart saying that, yeah, I'm excited about this group of guys too.
How much of that really though was tongue in cheek? To be honest,
it might have been. I don't know.
I don't think it was full throated. Oh my God, these guys are great. I think it was maybe a little bit of trolling to see who would bite on it, knowing full well that's the soccer would just absolutely lose their minds.
And like we talked about before, less and less. I like going on Twitter less and less because of just the constant negative.
And it's negative. And that I agree with, and it's negative all the way around. It's not just soccer Twitter, although soccer Twitter might be, I've heard everything I've heard, and I haven't gone down this rabbit hole, and I won't, is Reddit. I've heard that's even more depressing.
Reddit's good for some things. It depends on what you're doing on there. I don't go on Reddit nearly as much, but I find it to be useful in some areas.
So I guess the other thing I was going to ask is, there's two things I took away from this tournament that have nothing to do with soccer, but well, kind of do. Is Allie Wagner's really good.
She is, yeah. She's awesome.
And the other thing is which has nothing to do with Fox's coverage, but I think Jalen Rose should be replaced on Get Up or whatever that show, Greenberg show with Taylor Twellman. I think Twellman works better in that show.
Twellman is really good at talking about other sports.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right, where
and
Jalen is pretty much basketball only, and then he stumbles on himself. But where
it's
Twellman, but I thought Twellman, and when you come in and talk about soccer and then start talking about everything else, it's like he's pretty sharp all the way around and seems to get along a lot better than Jalen does with Greenberg specifically.
Allie Wagner. Back to her for a moment. Was so natural at it that I forgot she was a female, and that was a female voice when I was listening to her. It just sounded like person who knew what they were talking about. And then I know who it is. I'm familiar with her work, but I thought she was fantastic. And
that's kind of like when you watch a football game or anything or a basketball game and you have Doris Burke doing it.
Yeah,
There's certain ones that are just absolutely phenomenal and you don't care. And what she talked about was it fit in. She didn't overstep, like step on, who was she paired with? I forget who.
The Scottish guy.
Yeah.
Derek Ray.
Derek Ray. She never stepped, like she let him lead and stepped in when their timing was really well done.
I think Strong and Stuart Holden are pretty good too. For all the crap that we gave Fox ahead of the tournament,
they were fine.
They did a fine job.
Yeah. I thought Miola got better as the tournament went along.
Yeah. He sounds like Troy Aikman.
Yeah. And they both on Twitter started joking with each other on it. Yeah.
It is so weird though.
I want to say I felt like with Miola does better with the US games because he knows the ins and outs better, where it took him some time to adjust to having to probably just study up on games that he wasn't as familiar with. Like he's so familiar with the US and the US program. It's more of a natural fit for him, where he struggled early on until he got into what he needed to get done to be better at it. That's a lot of soccer in a short time. I mean, it's first time he's done it. He was thrown into like the number one team or number two team. Well, I forget whichever one it was. I think he was the number one team and they flipped it at the end, didn't they?
Yes. I think the number one team was considered to be Strong and Holden because they got the final. So,
right.
But yeah. So speaking of, we were talking about the comments about the being excited about the current crop of U.S. players, something Chris and I discussed the other day. I don't know how much we want to get into this, but it occurred to me that this group of guys could almost entirely play in the Olympics if we want to. If this is something we want to do and we want to try to go win with this group of guys, and I think we should.
Absolutely. That to me is not a question. I get it. It's not a FIFA tournament where they have to be released by their clubs. The U.S. soccer needs to press for this because it's international games, international tournaments, especially one as big as the Olympics. It's a whole different world. And I think for these young guys, I think the chance to experience the Olympics is something that it's a one-time thing. And I think it's like, even look at the NBA guys. They go in there and how much fun they have just being one of the athletes, being able to watch the other things and seeing some of the other events, and I think that would be.
And, look at what the 2000 Olympics did for the Landon Donovan, DeMarcus Beasley crop, and then look at what the 2012 Olympics did for Mexico. Like, it's a great sort of jumping off point if you've got a good crop of young guys.
Now, why do you have to bring Mexico into it? What did it do for Mexico? They got knocked out in the round of 16.
They still did the same thing. They always did.
They were much better coming in, but they still got knocked out in the round of 16.
It feels like this Mexico team is dramatically ahead of what they have been in the.
Absolutely.
It's not a team of dirtbags that'll they can stomp on your throat. They still will do that at some times, but this is a really technical and strong Mexico team. And
as long as you have Rafa Marquez, you're always looking for the dirty shot in there.
He still sucks. I still don't.
And he still can't come in the United States.
Yeah, he's not coming here. Also, speaking of this crop of young players that we're very excited about, I saw one of them yesterday. Christian Pulisic. We went to Dortmund, invited people to go to O'Hare to greet the guys as they came off the plane. And now I had both of my children with me, and one of them is my 7-year-old who's a soccer fanatic, who was there with his Pulisic jersey on, and he did get it signed. I put the video up on the YouTube channel and on Twitter if you haven't seen it. It was a pretty cool moment for him.
It absolutely was. And I saw the video on YouTube or on Twitter. I saw it on Instagram, and no, it's very cool.
And the guy at the end of the video, is Alex, who watches our show, Alex Calabrese, and his mom is the one like getting the cell phone photo.
Doesn't Alex usually, isn't he the one he has to do his homework?
He does, yes, normally.
Okay. He's not here. I don't see him.
So he went today. So Dortmund did another thing today.
Who's there?
They unveiled their new it's their Champions League jersey, basically, that they're going to wear tomorrow. I actually like it better than the normal home jersey.
Mm-hmm.
They unveiled that under a bridge by the Kennedy Expressway. And
was it in a van down by the river?
It basically was, yeah. And Alex went there today. I retweeted his photo. He got like the best photo with Pulisic I've ever seen anyone ever get. Pulisic's in the jersey. Mm-hmm. There's like a mural behind him of the yellow wall. The lighting's good. Like it's definitely one for the wall. So good job, Alex, on that. But yeah, seeing the guys come out at the airport for me was really cool because I didn't get an autograph because I was holding the 3-year-old. I mentioned the 7-year-old. The 3-year-old, he'll be 3 next week, kept saying, I know like this team over and over again because he was getting bored and didn't care. So I was fending him off so that Finn could get the meeting with Pulisic that he was hoping for. So I did get video of Pulisic meeting Finn, but that was about my son getting to meet him. I was near him, but I didn't get to like engage with him or anything. But he was really cool, went around the line, signed a bunch of autographs. So you could tell they had just gotten off a, 9-hour flight from, they flew out of Dusseldorf.
Probably, yeah.
It's pretty brutal. And then you have to like,
yeah, I'm sure it's brutal on a chartered flight, spread out.
It's comfortable, but still, with that, even if it's comfortable,
it's a 6 or 7. I got it.
You get off the plane and you got to like meet people. Like when I get off a plane, I want to like a flight that long at least. I would not want to stand there and smile for people and meet them.
I'm pretty sure nobody wants you to be honest. They just want you to go away.
That's fair. That's actually fair.
That's a fair. I mean,
but these guys did. They were really kind and gracious. And I'm going to see them tomorrow night in a game that
maybe
I should.
Maybe
they're going to trot Pulisic out. I know that.
I will give you, if you want to give me 4-1 odds, this game's going to get scrubbed tomorrow.
Because of weather? Because of the field?
The field.
Which that came up today. People were concerned that there's an artificial surface under the grass, which there's like a drainage thing. There isn't AstroTurf.
There are fibers. It's one of those blended ones, like Lambeau Field. It's mixed in, and apparently Dortmund isn't a fan of it. The club is not a fan of it, and you've seen Soldier Field. As a grass layout facility, it is garbage, and it always has been.
Yeah,
there's a reason. I mean, I get it. They're not hosting the World Cup because of what FIFA wanted. They weren't going to get it anyway because that field will not hold up. Field is garbage.
It always is too, and it's a product of having the Chicago Park District in charge of it, in my view, instead of the Bears or a professional team. Because if you go up to Lambeau or any of the other NFL stadiums around here that are, it's better.
Well, what Soldier Field runs into, and I think I've talked about it probably on here before, is the same problem you run into with why they had to get rid of the grass in New England. They built these stadiums so high, so everybody had a good sight line. Not enough natural light gets into it.
Yeah, but if you look at like what I was at the Allianz in March, and I did the stadium tour, and they had all these like light machines, like that they drove around to give the grass light, and there's ways to do it.
There absolutely are.
Just don't do it.
I mean, something like Phoenix, where they take the grass out into the parking lot and leave it in the sun all week. They roll that field literally in and out of that stadium.
Yeah, that's an amazing setup they have there.
And then, I've been at Chase Field and had lunch at Fridays in the outfield there, and yeah, same thing. You'd see lights on the field where they can, where you can do. Where they're just one of the parts that don't get light, and there are ways to do it. And you're right, it's probably the Park District. But if the Bears wanted to spend the money, they could too. They choose not to.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as a game though, I used to get really excited about international teams playing these kinds of. It would even before it was called the International Champions Cup or whatever it's called. I used to get excited about when they would come here and I'd go see Bayern or Manchester United or whoever was coming through. I haven't in a few years because I realized that when you actually sit down, I went to the All-Star game last year, same feeling. The event before the game is way better than the actual game. When you actually sit down to watch the game, you realize I don't care who wins this, and these guys aren't trying as hard as they could. And so I love the build up to it because I love having Dortmund in town, and they're able to promote themselves far better than our local team is able to promote itself. And then when the game starts, I realize that I'm just going to watch Pulisic run around until he comes out. So,
right. And then you're going to see a bunch of guys, and maybe even a third of them are going to be academy players that you've never heard.
Yeah, and it's worse for, looks like the Man City team is considerably short on big names because a lot of them made late runs in the World Cup. So, yeah, we're going to see guys in blue shirts pretending to be Man City. I looked back at the roster of one of the times Manchester United was in town. Who was on that team? I think TJ just dropped out, but I looked back at the roster then, and it was like I think I knew one of the guys this far out. So did we lose TJ? Yeah, it is like the Pro Bowl, Ryan. It's it's a bunch of guys, and you're excited for the event. There's lots of hoopla, and they're just kind of, nobody wants to get hurt. Nobody wants to it doesn't really matter if you win. I'm sure they don't want to have a bad showing. They're pro athletes, they're competitive guys, but yeah. So, Chris Poonslayer, we don't know where he is. We don't know. You know what? Somebody asked a while ago about his car. I think his car it may be on fire. He may have lit it on fire at this point. I'm not exactly sure, but he's coming down to Chicago. He lives in Milwaukee. He's coming down for the game tomorrow. And anything could happen with Chris. Anything could happen. He says he's a little bit sick, so could be the AIDS flaring up. I don't know. He's drunk in a car. I don't think so, but he is from Wisconsin. It's more widely accepted up there than I think pretty much anywhere else. Maybe on Earth. It's still kind of a thing up there. TJ might be back at this point. I was just making fun of Chris while you left.
You were making fun of Chris while I left?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Well, yeah, because Chris versus technology. Technology always wins. Now I'm just dealing with two children that are overtired, but okay, so...
You got two. Well, we're not going to be... I don't think we're going to be doing this too long, but we do have to talk about the U.S. Open Cup before we go, because the Fire won last night in front of a raucous crowd, which, you and I are excited about. But out west, there seems to be problems. There's problems. And the draw was supposed to be today to find out who was going to host the next round, and that got scrubbed because of what's going on with Portland and LAFC. Isn't that right, TJ?
Well, and it's I don't necessarily blame LAFC, because the players that are you can only have 5 international slots for the US Open Cup. Green cards count as Americans. They don't count against your, and I think that's the same as MLS. However, in MLS, they have international slots aren't taken by developmental players from other countries or Canadians, I think.
Right.
And I think that's what they ran into.
Yeah, the issue is there's a technicality in the rule differences between US Open Cup and
LAFC didn't pay attention to it.
Right. And I wonder if Portland knew before the game or if they waited until after. There was also accusations about an N-bomb being thrown at one of Portland's players.
I read that as well.
Which is just, you hope isn't the case, because that's terrible. But that seems like a mess, and hopefully that gets sorted out. I wonder, is it just going to be a fine, or is there going to be a replay, or are we just going to give Portland the win here, which I kind of hope.
I can't see. I honestly, I anticipate a fine.
Yes,
a replay at worst, but a fine, and maybe the other punishment is you can't host the next round or something like that. You have to go on the road.
And again, we had some piss poor crowds for this thing, which just makes me sad, because it's a fantastic tournament. And I look at what the Fire did here locally, and it was still $20 to park, as far as I know. It was $30 a ticket for some reason, and they only sold out one side of the field, basically.
Well, they did that purposely. They didn't sell the other side, and half of the side was Louisville people that came up.
Yeah.
Which they were awesome, and they were well represented.
They were great. Did you end up going, or did you watch it?
No. It was $30 a ticket and $20 to park. Now,
why not make it cheaper and make it, promote the hell out of it, and try to make it something people are excited about instead of making it an afterthought? I look at Schweinsteiger and think about all of the places he's played in his career, and playing Louisville City in front of, I don't know, a few thousand people has to rank pretty low for
Well, and
him.
then especially when you compare it to his Open Cup experience last year, where he came in, I think he came on as a sub against FC Cincinnati in front of
the fantastic crowd. Yeah. One
and
of the and earlier this year in Atlanta, they were fantastic. So
what was it, 40? That was the record, 40,000 or something like. But here's the deal. For the Fire, it's the problem. I've even asked some of the ticket guys and why they don't ever relocate them, and people who know, and they just said if they play somewhere else, they still have to pay Bridgeview for it. So whatever they have to pay Bridgeview, they're going to have to pay whether they open that park or not. And if they don't, which means they're paying double rent. That's why they play it in Bridgeview. The Open Cup games used to be part of the season ticket package, but instead of raising the cost of season ticket packages, and they haven't, as I've had tickets since 2011, my tickets have not gone up since I've had them. On a per game basis, they have not moved them. What they do is they've scaled things back.
Right.
We used to get scarves. We used to get things. We don't do that anymore. We still get parking. Charlie.
They made you pay for the Bastian Schweinsteiger bobblehead.
No, I had to pay for that too. Yeah. But instead of raising ticket prices, and I mean that's a whole nother discussion we can talk about the Fire and their whole situation and so on and so forth. That's for another night.
Also speaking of Twitter and the Fire and U.S. Open Cup problems coming to a head, there was also just a giant mess of people pointing fingers and people getting thrown out in the crowd yesterday, which is just, it's beyond ridiculous in my view. And it seems like, the larger point is that the Fire band basically broke up one of the supporters groups, Sector Latino, and refunded everybody and told them, you guys can come back, but you got to rebuy your tickets and you can't sit there. Because of a series of incidents that they're saying, and it's really fuzzy to me on do they know who did the things, or why are they blanket banning the whole section? But we're seeing this in a number of places now around the league with supporters groups who are getting pushed out because of problems. Even in DC, Barra Brava didn't have a section at the opening of their new stadium, which I like atmosphere, but I kind of think supporters groups push things too far and think they're overly important sometimes too. So there's a lot of nuance here in the situation.
I guess what I would say is and people tried doing that. They tried tying what happened with 101, which is what the section Sector Latino sits in, and Barra Brava, and San Jose apparently is having problems with theirs. And yeah, I saw somebody mentioning what happened in
Toronto had
Ottawa last night. It was in Ottawa.
Dynamite go off or something.
Yeah, more or less. They lit the section on fire in Ottawa Stadium, so their supporters groups are in trouble as well. You can't. I don't think you can look at them all and blanket them and say anything specific. It's you got to look at what each one individually. Now, from what I've heard, the rumor with Barra Brava was Barra Brava would take $20 tickets and sell them for $35 or something like along those lines. And the rumor, and Barra Brava was saying the reason they did that is that's how they paid for their TIFO. That's how they paid for their tailgates, things like that. Other people were saying there were people profiting off of it. So the club wanted to rein that in, and that's why they wanted to keep it under one section. So they put it with the Screaming Eagles because they weren't having that same issue. And of course, the Screaming Eagles and Barra Brava and La Norte and the others probably don't all get along, kind of like same with Section 8 and 101. They're trying to be united, but there's a reason why they sit separately. They don't get along all the time. I would love to get Combs in here because Chris and I, this is one of the only things we agree on fully is I love watching supporters groups. Or I love supporters. I don't like supporters groups. And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. They think they are more important at this point than they are. Do they provide a great atmosphere? Sometimes, yeah. And I've sat in them. I've been a member of Section 8 and American Outlaws. I've sat in them. I like sitting in them. Mm-hmm. I don't like some of the bullshit that goes on with them though. And I don't think that, I don't know, because nobody's really widely reported all the details with the Sector Latino thing. I don't know who to blame there for sure, because on one hand, I think blanket banning a whole group is stupid. On the other hand, if you are covering up for somebody and you're not, if you are causing a lot of problems,
at some point the club has to go, well, the insurance isn't going to want to pay for this. So, but the way the Fire have problems handling everything. So, but I do think that,
but do they?
In a lot of cases, yeah, they were, bottom of the league for 2 straight years. They're playing in Bridgeview, which I know they're saddled with at this point, but that was a decision to move there a long time ago and sign that lease. So,
but that was what they did at the time. That was nothing.
It wasn't
unusual.
unusual.
There was nothing that's how FC Dallas wound up in Frisco. I mean, Sporting KC is not in Kansas City. I mean, aren't they out in the suburbs? The bottom line is you got to win. The bottom line is you got to win.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing the Fire faced. They were a poorly run team, but I've heard lots of stories, and that's another, I think that's a whole show in and of itself if you really want to go into the details on it. Have they not spent money? They've spent money.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they haven't raised their ticket prices. If you want to spend more money, you got to raise your ticket prices, or you got to find other ways to make money. Well, the other ways you make money is corporate money, and Toyota Park, all that money goes to Bridgeview, so they don't get anything off of that.
It's a terrible deal.
It's a vile deal for everybody, and so they're saddled with it. But they got the stadium.
Even Bridgeview doesn't. I mean, I covered Bridgeview as a news reporter. Bridgeview's a disaster. So
the only stadium deal I know that's worse than that is the one in Phoenix for the Coyotes and the Village and the city of Glendale. That one's equally as bad, where nobody makes money on it. But I guess, to me, kind of getting back on topic, what the supporters groups are, I feel like they think they're more important. They think they should have a seat at the table. They think what they say is what the club should go with in terms of personnel decisions. And really, with Section 8 specifically, I felt that manifested itself. Was it 3 years back when they did that blackout game?
Yeah, but I mean, I was with them in that. Like, I wasn't there physically, but because the Fire were terrible. They needed a kick in the ass at the time.
Do you think that accomplished it though?
No, and that's where I agree with you. Is that by
doing that, when you're bottom of the table, I get it. You're in your second year of bottom of the table. You know what? Sometimes you have a bad general manager and a bad coach.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that point.
By the time they did that protest, they had already cleaned out. They had already started cleaning house. They made bad personnel decisions, and when you're talking a salary cap sport, like MLS for the most part is, you can't afford to have bad mistakes like that. And their table was set years ago, like several years earlier, when they went and got these bloated designated players at the end of their deals, like Lundberg and those guys.
Yeah, that was terrible.
But that sets the table for it. You're now bad.
Yeah.
And then that was at that point in that season, that's where they sold off Jovan Jones. That's where they started selling everybody off in the effort to rebuild. That was the Maloney year. It was just like they swung and missed on a lot of things. And when you're bad, but protesting that like you belong to have a seat at the table, it's garbage.
And I do think, like, people are saying, well, people aren't going because they're mad about what happened to Sector Latino. And I'll bet you that at least 50%, probably more, of the people in the stands at any given time don't even really have any idea what happened. And that's not crossed their mind. Like, what happens in Twitter is not real life.
Wait, who says that almost every week on the show? Yeah, I do.
I got that from you.
Yeah, you did. And I sit in a section, the first section over from where they cater you seats at midfield, on the right behind the Fire bench, on the north side of the Fire, just the first section. 90% of the people in that section have no clue about anything on Twitter. Usually they're looking, I can hear them talking about, well, where are the supporters groups? They don't know.
Yeah.
And they usually don't care. They're there to have fun and enjoy watching the soccer games. Do the supporters groups provide excellent atmosphere when they're dialed in? Absolutely. It's wonderful to watch them. I mean, like, you watch the yellow wall, in Dortmund. You watch
if you're talking internationally, nothing beats the yellow wall. That's I need to see that in person. But
I mean, or going back years ago when MLS was in 1.0 and 2.0, watching the Screaming Eels, Barra Brava, and Lenorte,
they were great
on the TV side, just absolutely rocking RFK. Things like that, outstanding. However, when you start demanding and feeling you're the most important fans, this just in, you're not. And if you're in a supporters group, pay attention to me. You're not. The ones who are the more important ones, the ones that are paying the $60, $70 a ticket in the middle, that are getting weighted on hand and foot. They're the ones they're going to listen to every time because remember, those $60, $70, $50, $60, $70 tickets at midfield are 6 to 7 times or more than yours are. Who do you think they're going to listen to? The ones that are paying their paychecks. That's why, and I'm going to use my other sports analogy, which I love doing. When they renovate these NBA arenas, when they're doing fixes, what are they doing? They're fixing the suites first. Why?
Sure, yeah.
Because that's the money. Follow the money. I love supporters groups, especially you look at the ones in Minnesota, for example, Portland, the things they do in the communities, things like that. And even Section 8 does some phenomenal things in the community. And that's outstanding. But don't overestimate your importance. Be a fan, enjoy the game, get out of the politics. That's okay. Now I'm done with that.
There you have it. I feel like we might have covered it at this point. We talked about the World Cup.
I saw somebody mentioning Jason Kreis. Was that a couple weeks back? He got the shoe in Orlando?
Yes.
So he's unemployed. Mixed Discrudes on world tour.
Of course. The reports out of Mexico that Osorio is about to he's not being fired, which is traditional for Mexico. He's just not coming back, which means maybe he comes here. We'll see.
Yeah, the U.S. National Team Rising series. Have you been watching that?
Oh yeah, they're fun. I haven't been through all of them yet, but the scene I like.
I haven't had time to get into them.
I'm impressed. The fact that they dropped those, I woke up Monday morning and I'm like, there's no World Cup, but you know what? That World Cup is behind us. If you're a US fan, I'm like back to being, okay, let's do this. Let's go. Now we're going forward. And they dropped those and they're cool. They're like 10-minute little packages about all of the guys who are going to be stars for the team, hopefully, for years to come. So well done to US Soccer on that. They're fun. And I hope to watch more of them soon.
This has been obviously not qualifying for the World Cup, made this, in theory, a really, really difficult year to be a fan of US soccer team. All the negativity, and then around the election, so on and so forth. But from a national team perspective, can you really argue for such a lousy year? Have they really done anything wrong? They went to the young kids. Their uniform set was pretty outstanding by their standards these days. The series dropping. They've moved them in. I get it. They're still charging an arm and a leg, but they moved into small stadiums for some of these games.
They have some badass friendlies coming up, including we're hearing Argentina in Chicago in October. So
that would
they've got some great friendlies coming up against big teams. They have not hired a coach out of desperation. So I felt like the decision to keep Saracen on until they get the guy they want to get, whoever that may be, was the right decision. I think they've been fine.
As a caretaker, I've had no problems with Saracen. He went, for somebody who's fighting for his job to go and get all these young kids and say, you know what, I'm going to throw them out there and see what happens. That's gutsy. That's somebody who's playing for coaching with nothing to lose, and that's outstanding. And I think that will reflect positively in the long run as we go into this. So,
yeah, Robert, I have not seen the Bradley article on The Athletic yet. I want to read that. I haven't signed up for The Athletic yet, so I need time to sit down and read that thing. It does. It seems like they have some fantastic content. It's the dude who, George, who is he owned Howler until recently. The Athletic brought him over to run their soccer stuff, and I think that he does a good job, and I think they've got a lot of awesome writers there. So I want to pay for that. But
and the only thing I've ever heard, the only negative I've ever heard out of The Athletic is when they bring these guys over, the first thing they do is they savage their old sites a lot of them do. And I don't think that's necessarily cool, but whatever. Wow. We're going to get into some weeks here where there's not a lot going on, but we got the international, we got Europe, we got La Liga, we've got the Bundesliga, we've got
just going to
Premier League coming up.
More about non-US related soccer on this show, I think, when we feel like it, because it's our show and it's what we do. So if you guys if you guys come here and you're talking about it in the chat and you want us to talk about it, we'll talk about it. We'll look through everything through a US lens, and we'll obviously cover US stuff first, but
do we want to
talk about different stuff? We will.
Yeah, and one more thing I saw in the chat box, speaking of, was the Chicago USL, its impact. And I think we've talked about that before, but I think that's another night. But did you see the development plans for Lincoln Yards?
Yes.
$5 billion, 5,000 housing units. That's amazing.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see. And I mean, for most people too, that is a much easier place to get to than Bridgeview. For you and I, it's actually easier to get to Bridgeview by a long shot. But Cisco's asking, and other people have asked about the Twelman doctrine. I saw it. I liked what he was saying. I wish it was a little more specific.
Yeah, but it is what it is. I don't think he designed it to be that specific.
Yeah, it was pretty broad, and yeah, I off the top of my head, I can't remember any of the points.
Hey, I'm just enjoying
inclusive.
I'm just enjoying a week we don't have to talk about Bruce Arena and something he mounted anymore, or Jurgen. None of them.
Yeah. I'm just still find incredibly interesting. For whatever reason, he's like.
I think does he have a future? Does he have a future as replacing the Dosaki guy as the most interesting man in the world?
He is interesting. He flies helicopters. He's into like health food. He's got stuff to say about, interesting topics. I like following him on social media. He seems like I would like to know him. He seems like a great, fascinating guy. I don't think I would like Bruce Arena. I do think I would like Jurgen Klinsmann a lot. I don't think either of them did their jobs correctly. So,
well, if they did, they wouldn't have gotten fired.
True. Yeah, Charles, Juve got Ronaldo, which we talked about last week.
Did. That's fine.
Interesting. Yeah,
but you know what? Beckham went there late in his career too. It's marketing.
Liverpool got Allison, which is
bless you.
They spent an amazing amount of money on him, record-breaking transfer fee for a goalkeeper, but they got that problem solved. So, I think Liverpool is. I mean, imagine if they still had Coutinho. I think Liverpool is a player away from competing for the Premier League or the even the Champions League. Maybe they're a fantastic team. They just need. I think they need something else.
They need a little bit more depth. I think too.
They've got the coach.
Oh, they do.
Yeah,
they do.
So
they got a coach that people want to play for.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, part of that's getting to be more and more of it is it's somewhere they want to go. It's gonna be fascinating this season.
Is this serious? Argentina wants Pep as their new coach.
I haven't heard that.
That would sort out the issues, because if you're giving the reins to Pep, nobody else is in control there, and everything will be taken care of. But there's such a disaster of a federation right now. I don't see them making the decision to give it to him, and I don't think that Pep would want to be an international coach at this point, except unless he's going to say, "I've done everything, and I just want to win a World Cup now."
Well, that might be next once he finishes with Man City.
I don't think if that happened, I don't think Messi would retire if he got to play for Pep again.
See, I don't know if I think Messi. I'm not sold on that.
You're hanging on doing the show, considering you got two kids climbing all over you.
Well, she's singing "Ring Around the Rosie." He's sneezing. Michael, normally, the USL team, will they pressure the Fire? No. No, they will not be. They will not be pressuring. They will not pressure Bridgeview.
Should we just throw questions at TJ and watch him field them when he's got the kids climbing on him at the end of the show? God. We should probably wrap this up.
We probably should. Let's table that USL discussion for another time.
The website's USfanTV.com. We have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, but not Snapchat, because we hate Snapchat. This is YouTube. We have that. You know that because you're watching a show on YouTube right now and you figured that out. Subscribe. And if you didn't, you can go check out the video I posted of Mr. Pulisic signing autographs yesterday at O'Hare. I am off to see him tomorrow with the other guy on the show who didn't make an appearance tonight. Chris will report back.
Unless he's dead, unless he's sick, dying.
You don't, or technology gets in the way.
That's true.
It is electronic ticketing. He's got to produce a ticket on his phone. That's the big question.
Oh no, you guys are screwed. You're doomed.
I didn't get tickets this time either. He got his own. They're right behind mine, and we are in 350 something. I'll put it on Twitter. Come up to us, and if you see us, if you know us, just like our friend Alex always does, come up and talk to us, because we want to know who is really willing to sit here and watch this show. We want to know who you are.
Oh, by the way, and I think we need to support fully Ben Fast in his quest for pro-rel and to have Donald Trump enforce pro-rel on the United States.
I didn't think that it could get worse
until Ben Fast.
Until that.
Now I've been blocked by Tinfoil Ted for years.
Ted's not nearly that.
Ted
makes good points sometimes. Like,
don't get it. Ted has gone gets almost vulgar with people. You know, like the fighting, like kind of like Don does with the Fire fans. You're an enemy.
It is.
Ben Fast he's crazy. I've seen him in the chat box before. I agree, Ivan.
Yeah.
Ben Fast is the hero America needs right now. And if you believe this, I've got a bridge for you in Brooklyn for you to buy.
It's, you know what? It's like I've said before, I'm a fan of ProRel and I would love to see it here. It does not fix all of the things, but I would like to see it here nonetheless. I think it's immensely entertaining unless you've got, it's not, the best thing in the world all the time. You saw what Aston Villa did a few years ago when Gazan was there, but sometimes teams just do give up. But these guys do a disservice to bringing it here sometimes with how vile and militant they are. I don't want to be on your side because you are crazy. Have some thought and nuance and in the discussion. It's whatever. Ted getting tweeted by Applebee's. Did you mention that last week?
Said something, made fun of U.S. soccer because of Applebee's, and Applebee's like subtweeted him and just started trolling Ted for a little bit. It was absolutely awesome. Yeah, that was the Applebee's and Ted story. I'll track that one down. I'll bring that one next week, Robert.
All right. There's a cake show.
I've got 2 more weeks and then I'm out for 3 weeks. So
do you know what? There's a cake show. There's some sort of show on
Netflix.
On Netflix, and the lady says you're done, and my son and wife watch it. I'm pretty furious. She stole our catchphrase, but I'm going to still say it. TJ, do you have any more final words?
Go Ben Fast. We're with you all the way.
We will see you. Leipzig's back. We were just talking about you. Leipzig, come on, man. You got to be on the show more faster than that. We were wondering if you were ever going to watch again. All right. Thanks for watching. We'll be back, I don't know, probably Tuesday next week. We'll see.
Whatever day we get there.
You're done.
You're done.